Hello, I'm Rachel Rudolph, the Extension Vegetable Specialist at the University of Kentucky, and I'm going to cover high tunnel soil and site preparation. Preparing a high tunnel for a new crop may take more or less time depending on whether or not you have used the high tunnel recently. If you've been using the high tunnel all winter and you're preparing for a spring tomato crop, you are likely familiar with any issues in the high tunnel, whether that be structural components that need repairs or soil-related amendments or applications. However, if you haven't really used your high tunnel since last summer or fall, it's a good idea to expect the unexpected. A lot could have changed in the past 4 to 6 months. So when preparing for planting, you want to inspect the high tunnel structure, evaluate the soil quality, evaluate weeds and their severity, apply pre-plant fertilizer, set up and test irrigation, and install weed mat. Firstly, inspect the high tunnel for any structural issues or tears in the plastic. It will be easier to fix these things before there's a crop that you have to walk around inside the high tunnel or worry about trampling. Check the sides and end walls. Do they open as they should? Can you close them completely? Ask yourself, will this hold up for the next 6 to 8 months? And if so, will I be sure to make time for any repairs in the fall? If your answer is no to any of these questions, then definitely set aside time now to make repairs and fix things before they get worse. Next, evaluate the soil quality and the presence of weeds. Although there typically aren't as many weeds in the winter, they may still be there, especially in a high tunnel. Deal with the weeds now before they get larger and multiply. Give your crop a nice head start by clearing out all the weeds before you plant. Try to remove the weed roots and any seed heads to help prevent weeds from growing back or reseeding. Even if you're going to put down weed mat or some other sort of covering on top of the soil surface, weeds can grow underneath and affect your crop. If the soil is hard, it may require some sort of tillage or cultivation, even if you don't have a lot of weeds. Whether you are direct seeding or transplanting, a light tillage that is only a couple of inches deep can help loosen up the soil surface, which will help prepare the seed bed for good soil to seed contact and will help with the establishment of transplanted crops. If the soil is very dry, you may need to apply some irrigation before tillage. For most crops, a pre-plant application of fertilizer is recommended. Take a look at your soil test results. Any phosphorus or potassium should be applied pre-plant. 1/3 to 1/2 of the nitrogen is usually applied pre-plant as well. We use a dry fertilizer for pre-plant applications. We calculate how much is needed for our crop, weigh out that amount, apply it to the soil, and lightly incorporate. We do not have permanent beds in our high tunnels, but we have a good idea of where the crop is going to be based off several years of experience. We only calculate the fertilizer needed for the area where the crop will be and apply it there, rather than broadcasting it throughout the entire high tunnel. This is different than what may happen in the open field with a broadcast application across the entire field. The exception to this would be if a soil pH adjustment is needed. If that is the case, apply either lime or sulfur, whatever you need to adjust the soil pH, to the entire soil area inside the high tunnel, not just the beds. Water is necessary not only for the future crop, but also for applying pre-plant fertilizers or any amendments. Be sure to set up and test your irrigation system well before planting your crop. If something is not right, it will be easier to address those issues before a crop is in the ground. In some cases, you may be able to use components from last season, such as lay flat and connectors. Drip tape should be replaced at least every 12 months, and spring is often the time we install new drip tape. For a tomato crop with in-row spacing of 18 inches, I like to use drip tape that has emitters that are 8 inches apart. For more shallow-rooted crops or crops with a closer in-row spacing, it may be best to use drip tape with emitters that are closer together, such as 4 or 6 inches apart. When laying out the drip lines, have an idea of where your future crop will be. The drip tape should be only a few inches at most from the roots of your future crop. Even for new drip tape, be sure to flush the lines and look for holes or leaks. This means leave the ends of the drip tape lines open, turn on the water, and let water run out the ends. Once you flush the lines, you can cap or seal the ends of the drip tape. You may want to secure the drip tape with a couple of sod staples so you can keep it where you want it. For weed management, we use a woven weed mat. This can be used for multiple years, but it should be removed or pulled back each year for proper soil sampling and fertilizer applications. If it is removed from the high tunnel, be sure to hose it down and clean it before storing it, which will make things easier when you put it back out in the spring. We keep the weed mat on the edges of the tunnel in place all the time unless replacements are needed. Use sod staples to secure the weed mat in place. Put one sod staple every 4 to 5 feet and be sure the weed mat is pulled tight and secured, or it can easily become a tripping hazard later in the season. If using new weed mat, you can either make the needed planting holes before installing it in the tunnel, or you can install the weed mat and then make the holes. You can use a knife or a small blowtorch. The knife leaves raw edges that may unravel over time, but the edges are soft. The blowtorch singes the edges so they don't unravel, but then the edges are a bit sharp. This can scrape your hand when you're transplanting or can scratch your plants if you're not careful. Whatever you decide to do, use a tape measure and mark the holes first to be sure you have them where you want them, then make the holes with either a knife or a torch. If there are any raw edges along the weed mat, fold them under and secure them with sod staples to avoid unraveling later in the season. Weed mat should go over the top of drip tape. This will ensure that the water gets to the plant's roots and keeps the drip tape in place. Here are some things to keep in mind. Repair the high tunnel structure and any components. Apply pre-plant fertilizer and any amendments based off a recent soil test, ideally from within the past year. Run irrigation and make sure it is working. Do as much as you can before you plant, as it will always be easier to fix things without a crop in the ground. Resources include our Vegetable Crops Extension and Research website and UK ID 36 Vegetable Production Guide for Commercial Growers. Funding is provided by the USDA Extension Implementation Program.